Welcome to the world of some edibles, where there's a variety of CBD and THC delights. Whether it's cookies, brownies, or rice cereal bars, Some Edibles has what you're looking for. Milligrams of CBD and THC on the label will help you discover your magical number. Not too little and not too much, just right. Order at someedibles.com and use coupon code DRUNKEN for 10% off your order. That's coupon code DRUNKEN for 10% off your order at someedibles.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Drunken Housewife Reviews with our first interview of 2024. I am Sarah, the Drunken Housewife.
And I'm her husband / host, Ian, who tries to keep her on the rails the best I can, and God help me.
It's a full-time job. We are here with Jeff Ignatowski, who I met through the convention trail. And Jeff is, I had to write all of this down because it's a lot. So
you want to get it all in.
Yeah, so you are the creator of Killer's Hunting Ground, Killer Scenes, Catch Me If You Can Cryptid Edition, Killer Profiles, Serial Killer Cards, Serial Killers Speed Kills, Killers Card Game, and then you also have a book and a new game coming out, and everything is centered around true crime and serial killers, which I thought I was obsessed with true crime and serial killers.
I mean, if you can't see my background right now,
yeah,
like I have a ton of stuff, and but yeah, I really started out in the gaming industry, wanting to find kind of a niche for us, and I've always loved games, and I love true crime, and I love educating people. So I kind of combined the three things. The first thing that I put out was Killers the Card Game. That was my original game. Actually, it's right here. This is actually the original box.
And it's on lists for my gift-giving occasions.
Currently, the box does not have the faces on it. They actually made me take that off at some point. They wouldn't allow me to print it with the faces on it. At least domestically, the company that we get them from now doesn't care. But actually, the marketing ended up being much better when we took that off, and it was a little bit more ambiguous. So we put it on the back. So it ended up working out really good. But Killers the Card Game is my original. It currently has 5 expansions. We've got what's the first one we did? Organized Crime, World of Serial Killers, Lady Killers, Cults, and Mass Murderers. Mass Murderers was the most recent one that we put out. My second game was a game called Speed Kills, which was kind of like a party version of Killers the Card Game. Kind of like playing Exploding Kittens, but with serial killers, right? And so your Exploding Kitten card in that game is called Shootout with the Fuzz. And when the fuzz comes and starts shooting, you're dead. The game's over. I then came out with a couple other games. One of them is the cryptid game that I came out with, which oddly enough for my company was the only flop that I've ever had. Everything else has always been fully funded, and I just did not figure out the marketing for that game. So, it happens.
Everything can't be a winner.
It might be a sleeper. It might be a sleeper hit. You never know. As far as through word of mouth, not through the
build a cult following.
Yeah.
Which is really funny because at conventions, it's probably the game that's picked up the most that people look at and are like, man, if you had that right now, we'd buy it. But it's not in mass production yet. So it's really funny that it didn't work on Kickstarter, but it seems to be really popular as far as the convention circuit goes. You just never know. But then I came out with a game called Kill Scene, which was based on playing spades. And it's a trick-taking game. Of course, you are a killer. You are playing with other people. You're trying to develop your kill scene from an abduction, a transportation, a location, and a kill. You are then trying to either partner with other killers that are also playing the game with you to fulfill your goals, or you could stab them in the back, which is usually what they do. So the game ends up becoming very, very strategic. It's a lot of fun.
Sure.
But Kill Scene was my fourth game. I then put out a custom haunted house game, which has been a lot of fun, where you play as a haunted house attendee trying to get through the haunted house with the lowest scare factor. So your card, if you get to I think it's a 5 or a 6, you're terrified, you piss your pants, you're out of the game. So
see, I would be the person trying to do that to other people. I would be like, no, you're going to be pissing your pants and I'm going to be walking through like it's Mary Had a Little Lamb. That's
Absolutely.
I would so do that.
So in that game, there are a bunch of cards that you can use to mess with other people. You can like lock other people that are playing in like a seclusion room and raise their levels and stuff. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. But I've got probably 4 or 5 other games in the works. You mentioned I have a new game that's getting ready to come out, and I will show that to you guys here in a second.
Sweet.
It's going to hit Kickstarter in March, and it will be the first like big departure, not necessarily from true crime because it's still related to that, but away from the killers themselves. So one of the things that makes it really difficult for me as far as marketing is concerned is the fact that we wanted to use the actual cases and we wanted to use the actual people. Of course, I knew that that was never going to get into Walmart or Target or anything like that. So I never had any illusions that that was going to be a thing. But eventually I had to come out with a game that is mass marketable. And so I think we've done that with the newest game. It is called The Profiler, right? And so the game is like playing a live version of CSI.
Yes.
It is a social deduction game. Now, the only caveat with this is social deduction need a large group of people to play, like 6 to 15 people to play the game. So it's a little bit limiting when, you don't have a group of friends or you don't, but I think that when the true crime community gets a hold of it and all the true crime book clubs and stuff, it will be the #1 go-to game for them.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for them to get that. And so I think with that game, you're going to have 60 minutes. You're going to have to figure out who the killer is in your group, figure out what kind of killer they are. And all of those killer profiles are taken directly from the FBI classifications. So you're talking about thrill killers, power and control killers, comfort killers, lust killers. So they'll all fit those profiles, but you will have to go and look at the actually, I'll show you here because I have some of the old ones. They're updated now, but these are some of the police reports that I have. These are the handwritten ones that I did. Okay. So, but there are police reports, medical examiner reports. There is a laboratory report that you'll be able to go through and figure out the evidence and then put the evidence out there for everybody to see. And then the whole group will be able to deduce who the killer is, what kind of killer they are within that 60 minutes. Now, the killer is also playing. So the killer will be able to throw you off the track. They may have 1 or more henchmen in the game that will throw you off the track. And they're going to be trying to stay under wraps. They will also be able to kill people during the night and possibly kill people during the day. So there is a lot of elements in the game. With the Kickstarter, we are going to release a blood typing mini expansion, which will allow you to look at the different blood type that's at the scene. There is also a blood spatter analysis guide that I put together that will be used in the game. You'll be able to look at some of the cards and figure out what kind of blood splatter.
Oh, cool.
At some point, I want to make it in-depth enough where you can tell from looking at the pictures how tall somebody is, what angle in the room they were standing. So the ultimate goal of this game is to literally teach people how to be a criminal investigator.
Sweet.
I want people to be able to really look at that and to play it and have a lot of fun and investigate these crime scenes like they're trying to solve a cold case.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like with all of those elements, yeah, the bigger the group you get, the better, because I mean, the
Well,
killer
yeah.
is going to be able to hide really well if the group's,
Yeah.
you know, a good size, but that sounds like fun. I
And
mean,
you may have more than one killer in the game.
Oh,
So there may
you
be
go.
two killers killing it. If you have a large enough group, if you have like
Yeah.
15 people, you could play with two killers, two henchmen, a medical examiner, a lab analyst, a FBI agent. You could have a good cop and a bad cop in the game.
sweet.
So they could all be working against each other to figure it out. And if you have multiple killers, then you've got to figure out from the different crime scenes that are popping up around the town. We created a fictitious town for this.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so it is in Bullitt County, New Mexico, and it is Death, New Mexico.
There you
And
go.
the whole premise is that Death, New Mexico is a misnomer, and there hasn't been any death in New Mexico other than natural causes for like 50 years until y'all showed up. And now there's all kinds of shit happening in town. So
Okay.
Okay.
So
sounds fun.
yeah, we're the Jessica Fletcher, I guess. I mean, that's one thing that always
Yes.
got me watching that show. I'm like, if I saw Jessica Fletcher walk in a room, I'd be like, whoop, look at the time. Gotta go. Jess is here. Nope, somebody's gonna die. Gotta go. Gotta go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was just bad luck.
I
I mean, seriously.
know, it's like everywhere that woman went, somebody died. It's like, seriously, I would not leave my house. So I know I was like, it seems like true crime and serial killers and all that is like in vogue right now, but I was true crime before true crime was cool,
A thing.
you know, so to speak. Starting with like my very first one was Jack the Ripper, because it was that unknown, because nobody's
Yeah.
ever really figured it out. Who was your first, Jeff? Tell us about your first
Yeah, who were
killer.
you obsessed with?
Who
So
tripped your trigger?
so it was Jack the Ripper too.
Oh, sweet. See, I
yeah,
knew we were going to be best friends.
I watched so long time ago. I will be 44 this year. If you couldn't tell, I got plenty of gray hair there.
I have no idea what you're saying.
Yeah.
I know. I'll tell you
57
what,
coming up here.
it's so crazy. Like in the last I saw some pictures from like 3 or 4 years ago, and my beard was still all black, right? And I was like, wow. And in 3 or 4 years, it has progressively went white and white. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, what's happening here? It's crazy.
Yeah, when I
But,
married him, he had a full head of hair and none of that. So
Yeah. Oh, just a minute ago before I came on here, I went and used the bathroom. I was like messing with my hair, and I was realizing, I'm like, hold on a second. Why is it looking thinner than it used to?
it
What the hell is
happens.
going on here?
Yeah.
It happens.
I don't know how I feel about that. Now both my mom and dad have a full head of hair, so I would be surprised if it ends up happening to me. But if it gets too bad, we'll just shave it. There ain't no comb over.
Well, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom and dad both have their hair, and I just no.
You're
I'm so
not
glad-
helping me at all.
I know. I'm
You're not
sorry.
helping.
But be blessed, because it looks like you have a good shaped head. So, you know, that's the bald
have not
guys
been
with the
willing-
weird heads. I'm like,
Yeah, I haven't been willing to test that out, but we'll see. Hopefully, we don't have to ever see. But
yeah.
we'll
Well, it's not
So,
that bad. You get used to it.
Yeah.
but I did. I started out with Jack the Ripper. Even before that, when I was a kid, I grew up right outside of Philadelphia. A lot of my family. This is one of the things that drives me crazy about the true crime community. Right? I love the community. But when we talk about true crime, often we end up talking about serial killers. Well, true crime encompasses everything that
Yeah.
happens in real life regarding a crime. So if
Yeah.
I go and shoplift today at a store, technically that's true crime.
Yeah.
But we all talk about it, and we only talk about these real big cases and especially people here in the United States. We know about 12 serial killers. Everybody knows who Jeffrey Dahmer is and Ted Bundy and,
Mhm.
Eileen Wuornos and Richard Ramirez. But one of the things that I always wanted to do with the education piece, like Killers the Card Game, has over 500 killers in it, close to 600 right now, right?
Yeah.
I wanted it to be a library, a compendium of
Okay, yeah.
information that people could get to understand these different killers and to get into their mindset.
Yeah.
So for me, it was all about the psychology and being able to step into that role. So, when I grew up, I grew up around a bunch of true crime. I grew up right outside of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Half of my family was involved. They were Italian. I am not Italian at all. However, half of my family is all married in Italian. I have an Uncle
Mm.
Sonny and Uncle Primo, and they were all fronts for the mob in the early 70s. So I grew up around a lot of that stuff with this mob culture. And then there were all these stories. My dad met Manson in the early 60s, before the murders. So I grew up with these stories about Manson. And of course, they weren't friends or anything. They didn't really
No.
know each other.
No.
He just met him at random. But I heard the story of that over and over again. And so I grew up really like being intrigued by all of these cases. And then the one that really kicked it off ended up being Jack the Ripper. I got really involved in that. Um, my favorite probably is H.H. Holmes. Uh, Actually, right behind me, I've got some dirt from the murder castle there. I have more on the other side of the room, but directly across from where I'm sitting right now, I can see it is a ticket to the 1893 World's Fair, which is both satisfies my interest in P.T. Barnum because I'm a huge fan of P.T. Barnum and the whole sideshow freak show thing,
Okay.
and a huge fan of the Murder Castle and the World's Fair where he was taking in these people and potentially killing them, if
Yeah.
that's true at all, because we don't know if that's true or not. So,
Well, I mean, they found how many skeletons?
did
Yeah.
they though?
Well, I don't know. What fascinated me though was after like all of this stuff came out, the neighborhood, I mean, didn't they just like show up at the murder castle with like pickaxes and hammers and they're like, we're tearing this thing down. It's
Well,
gone.
it burned down mysteriously, right? And that,
Mysteriously. Yeah.
yeah, that happened while he was in prison. He was still alive when the murder castle burned down, and you wonder if it burned down. There is a good possibility that he had it burned down because he didn't want them to find what was there, right?
See,
So
Yeah.
they had already went in and done an investigation in there, but it wasn't super thorough. It was the initial kind of walkthrough that they did, and then a
Mhm.
couple days later, the murder castle burned down. Now there is a theory that he talked to a guy on the outside and had him take care of it for him,
Mhm.
because they didn't want any incriminating evidence. I don't know how true that is. It could have been that the neighbors were super pissed off and they didn't want it there. Maybe they burned it down. But you're
Yeah.
talking 200 years ago,
And we'll
so
yeah. We'll never really know.
well, not 200, 100 years ago,
Yeah.
120 now. So
Yeah. Yeah. 120 something. Yeah. It's really weird when you think like cases like that from, the 1890s, if you could go back in time with the technology that we have available today,
oh yeah. They would have probably found a
what would you
lot more
find?
stuff.
I mean, it's like, like Jack the Ripper. You go back in
Yeah.
time with the technology we have available today, that dude would have been arrested, kill 3.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
it's crazy to think just even in 100 years how far the technology to investigate and collect evidence and all of that has come.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why you see such a decline in serial killing, right?
Yeah.
Our forensics and our investigation techniques are so good now. It's almost not impossible, but it's highly unlikely that somebody would be able to string together like Ted Bundy did, 30 plus murders all
Yeah.
over the country, right? Every police department is now talking, mainly because of him, because
Yeah.
he did all of these things. Now we have a nationwide database that is collecting all of this information so that you can't just go into another county and kill somebody and nobody ever know about it and them never put the crimes together. So it was like groundbreaking cases like that that have gotten us to this place. And that's probably the one thing that drives me crazy about the culture that we live in is that we forget that it took understanding those things
Mm-hmm.
to develop the technology that we have now.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
we just sweep those things under the carpet now, then how does technology continue to develop? How do we
Exactly.
get better forensics? How do we get better investigative techniques
Mhm.
if we don't have people that are interested in these crimes, interested in the cases, interested in looking at the evidence? But we live in a society that wants to just like avoid anything that's negative or that is perceived as bad because it might upset somebody else.
Oh yeah.
Well, I know for myself, I don't do it because I think any of these people are incredible, amazing human beings. They're all pieces of shit. I do it because I think it's important that people understand these things so that we can curb some of the things that go on, so that
Yeah.
we can be better prepared to live our lives when there are people out there that have devious intentions to hurt other people. You see that with the Idaho 4 thing that's going on right now.
Exactly.
And Kronberg or whatever, however you pronounce his name. The same thing in Gilgo Beach with I can never think of his name. But anyway, the big guy there that they currently have on trial for the killings, they just last week went and attributed the 4th murder to him. And they have, I think, 11 more that they're talking about that they're still investigating that may or may not be related to him. It may be another killer that was
Yeah.
dropping bodies off there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating. And if we don't continue to up our game and really look at those things, and it's a big reason why I thought that, you know, I know for myself, the best way that I learn is when I'm having fun.
Yeah.
I'll learn if it's super
Oh
boring.
yeah.
Yeah.
I hated school because it's boring as shit.
Yeah.
You know, who wants somebody to lecture to you all the time? So, how do we figure out a way to teach some of those skills while everybody's still having fun and enjoying it and learning those things? So,
Yeah.
no matter
Well,
what the
I mean,
naysayers say.
yeah, it kind of falls into, I think it was Churchill that said we need to learn from our past so we don't repeat it.
Yeah.
And that kind of falls that we need to learn from these past, you know, crimes so that we can prevent them from being repeated. Or if they are repeated, we can catch the person, you know, quicker before they
So,
get a
Not only that,
huge
but
body
make it
count.
definitely a deterrent for anybody potentially. It's like, oh well, there's this likelihood that I can be caught in this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And then they like, hey, maybe I should focus my attention somewhere else.
But it's kind of a double-edged
sure.
sword too, because I know I was talking, our apartment got broken into, and I was kind of joking with the officer that came, you know, to take the report and see if he could find any, you know, thing. And I kind of joked, I was like, well, heck, Gil Grissom would have had this thing solved by now, man. What's your problem? And he's like, I hate that fucking show so bad.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked at him, he's like, it's teaching criminals how to be smarter. And he's like, by the time we've developed the technology to find that evidence that they've left behind, they've learned not to leave that evidence behind. And I'm like, yeah, I can see it is that double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, so when you're looking at if you're talking about crime as sophisticated crime, because I would not consider murdering somebody a sophisticated crime,
Yeah.
right? It's a very, very compulsive, base kind of crime that happens. Sophisticated crime, when you're breaking in and robbing somebody, you know, stealing thousands of dollars, or, you know, even internet crimes, right? And stealing people's identities, you know, stealing credit card numbers, stuff like that is very sophisticated. Those people are already 3 steps ahead,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so our forensics and our technology is trying to catch up to them as they're developing new ways to swindle other people.
Oh, yeah.
It's why you can never get rid of the robocalls, right? And the people calling up to scam people, because they, even though there's technology out there to stop that, they will find the people that are susceptible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the only way that you can combat that is education
Yeah.
and getting people to understand that, like, hey, when you're on Facebook and your Facebook group gets hit by 30 messages a day that say you're in violation, we all know that Facebook will take you down immediately. They don't give you any reason. They just shut your shit down.
Oh, yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not going to send you a message and say, hey, contact us, well, there's a problem. All of those are fake, fraudulent accounts that are
Mhm.
trying to get your information. And so, and I watch it every day, even from like people that I think are incredible. I watch them on Facebook asking, like, hey, did you get this message? What's going to happen? And I'm like, brother,
It's
it's
a scam.
bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I
and the
literally
whole-
get 15, 20 a day.
Yeah, the whole, if you post this in your you know,
It messes up the algorithm.
yeah,
stuff
it
like that.
fixes your algorithm and you can see friends, and I'm just like, seriously,
Yep.
post it, or I do not give Facebook permission to, share my pictures or something like that. It's like, number
Facebook
one,
doesn't
they're
give
not.
a shit.
It's not
Yeah.
Facebook themselves that's
Yeah.
doing it. There's
Yeah.
somebody else on there that's stealing
what's-
your pictures.
What's
Yeah.
interesting about that, and not that my mind is criminal at all, but they all do it, and it's a way to get to see who's susceptible, right? If you're willing to post, if I don't give Facebook permission to do this, then you're susceptible to other dumbass shit online, right?
Exactly.
Because you've already bought into it. Like, if you believe
Yeah.
that this is possible. And I think a lot of times the criminals that are out there are looking for those things. They're looking to find little segments of the population that they can give a little bit more to, and like, okay, we'll see, does this work if I send them that? And if
Yeah.
they log into this, right? And so it's all a scam to get you to a place where they can get your credit card information, where they can get your identity information. If you type in that stuff, then you're screwed, and now all of a sudden your bank accounts are drained.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ultimately, they wouldn't do it if that shit didn't work,
Exactly.
right? They're getting
Exactly.
somebody to do it. They ain't getting me to do it, but they're getting somebody to do it. But education is important, right? And
Mhm.
understanding those things, and understanding the new wave of or the new trends in criminal activity are really important, because we're all susceptible,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because they are so sophisticated. There is so much out there that can be, easy for us to mistake. It's just like you go to the gas station, right? They have the card skimmers,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
they put on there, and they can collect your information that way. Well, how the hell do you know? It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you've been driving 12 hours, and you stop at a gas station to get gas. I'm not paying attention. I'm half asleep, right?
Yeah.
So, there's just so many ways. And,
Yeah.
the police often don't have the best technology. They don't have the most up-to-date information, right? There
Mhm.
isn't enough education. And so it's very difficult to catch up with all of those things that are going on. And sometimes it's good for them to watch those shows too, because they're like, hey, why the hell don't we have this stuff if this
Yeah.
is legit? Right. And then, of course, there's a lot of shows that are bullshit too, that show all kinds of stuff that don't actually happen. Like, we watch all the shows, CSI and, all of those different shows. And it's like, hey, the forensics report came back in an hour, 30
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
That's not how that
No.
shit works, right?
No. Yeah.
Like,
DNA is not coming back for weeks.
yeah.
The analysis on, and they always show the actual CSIs doing all the lab work, and I'm like, that's
Yeah.
bullshit. They're
Yeah.
out
No.
there gathering, taking the pictures, the measurements, all of that, but they're not the ones in the DNA lab running the blood and all of that. But yeah, so it's like, you got to understand they're streamlining it. They're streamlining that whole process so that we can solve it in 2 days and move on to the next episode. But
Yeah.
One of the things that I am super proud of, that I didn't, well, I mean, I intended for this to happen, but I always hoped that it would. Today, as a matter of fact, I posted last night, really late on my Facebook page, I posted the layout that I'm doing for the next Kickstarter that's coming up. And in that layout, it has the one example of the police reports, the medical examiner reports, and the laboratory report. A retired detective from Chicago. He's going to kill me because I always. Okay, I got it. Shit. But Bill Dorsch is the Chicago detective. He ended up being a whistleblower on the Chicago Police Department.
Oh,
wow.
After the whole Gacy case. Now, he was involved in some of that. And so he actually had dinner with Gacy in his house at one point. Him and his wife did. They lived across the street from a house that Gacy was the maintenance guy for. And Bill actually went out there, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning or something. And Bill was out for some reason and saw Gacy out there with a shovel and said, "Hey, John, what are you doing out here?" And he said, "Oh, man, you got to work any time of the day you can, right?" And so, of course, they believe that is one of the places where they did the ground penetrating radar. They found a ton of anomalies. And then when Chicago went in there to dig, they dug in the one place that the ground penetrating guy said, "There's nothing there. Don't even bother looking," right? Because Chicago did not want to be implicated, because Des Plaines was the one that had the 29 bodies under the house and had all of the stuff. Chicago didn't want to be implicated. They didn't want any more bodies to be found. And what I'm here to tell you is that my buddy Bob Mata, who runs Defense Diaries podcast and is a former defense attorney, his dad was Gacy's defense attorney, is currently
not an
him
easy
and Bill
job.
Dorsch.
Yeah.
wow.
Him and Bill Dorsch are currently going back, and they are going to dig for more bodies. And they have at least 4 locations right now that they are going to go and look at and find. They're doing an incredible job. But anyway,
Wow.
all of that.
Okay.
Bill Dorsch has got a book out called Omnipotent. That's on Amazon. It is incredible. Actually, it's up on my shelf right now. And I read it.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And so he commented on my post this morning, right? Because I tagged him in it. And he commented on it, and he was like, "Dude," he was like, "that stuff looks really, really authentic. It looks really good." And then he started giving me some suggestions. He's like, "Man, you could do all kinds of stuff with this." And one of the things that he did with the Gacy case is he went around doing interviews, right? So he has videos of interviewing some of the people that were involved in the case, that saw Gacy at the apartment complex doing all kinds of weird stuff, like cementing things in, digging trenches, all of this stuff. And I told him, I said, in the first expansion, I already plan on having like witness statements. And we might even video those witness statements that can be played during the game. And people will get witness testimony and will help out either positively or negatively with the crimes.
Yeah,
so
I will video. Yeah, if you need me to videotape a statement,
sure, we're happy to.
Because we have theater experience, so call us. We'll help you out with that. That sounds fun.
So it was like super cool. I've had a couple. I had a lady that came to my booth when I was up in Chicago. I was up there for an oddity show just a couple months ago. But anyway, she came up to the booth, and I got to talking with her. Super, super nice lady. She was looking at killers. And I was telling her, she asked me a couple questions, and she said that she knew a bunch of dirty cops. And I kind of laughed, and I said, "Oh, yeah, right. How do you know a bunch of dirty cops?" And she laughed, and she looked at me, and she said, "For the last 30 years, I just retired, but I was in internal affairs for the Chicago Police Department." And I was like,
Oh,
you really do
wow.
know a bunch of dirty cops.
Oh yeah, you're like, I need your name,
Yes.
I need your number.
Yeah.
This could be fun.
So I handed her all of my police reports and I had her look through those. And she was like, they look incredible. She said there's a couple things that you should, like one thing that you need to change. I put alcohol in there. She said an actual cop would never put that. It'd always be alcoholic beverages
Yeah.
because alcohol doesn't have a smell. And so she said, if you fix that, everything else is perfect. I said, dude, that's amazing. So like getting confirmation like that. I met a guy when I was in Orlando who is a former medical examiner down there. He was an autopsy tech in Orlando. I sent him the medical examiner reports. He loved them. He was like, dude, these are perfect. He was like, you don't want to get too much more complicated because people are not going to understand them. So
Yeah.
keep it simple, but it's still fun and it's right on. So just keep it the way it is. I was like, okay, cool. That's good feedback.
Very cool.
And then I've had a couple other people look at some stuff. So it's been really cool to get that confirmation from a bunch of people that are professionally in the game. Like that lady in Chicago, like she has read over thousands of police reports,
Yeah.
picking them apart to
Yeah.
see if someone is lying or fudging the reports. And the fact that she read them and was like, dude, one of my officers could have wrote these. I'm like, okay, that
Okay.
makes me feel good.
Very
I'm doing a good job.
Yeah,
I'm doing
that's
it.
it.
Validation. Thank you. Thank you.
That's it.
Yeah. No, I kind of cracked up when you said your dad had met Manson because when I first became aware of the whole Manson family cult and all that, and I was because my dad also he taught history and government and psychology, and so serial killers was and cults and all of that was just like his jam. And I was talking over with my dad. My mom had a funny look on her face, and dad was like, "What?" And she goes, "You remember where I went to school, right?" He's like, "Yeah." It was right next to the Gibraltar School for Boys,
Oh,
where
yeah.
Manson was. And she goes, "I'm just realizing he was there when I was in school, and we used to throw rocks at those kids
Oh shit.
Yeah.
and taunt them with things like, we know who our parents are and stuff like that."
Oh yeah.
And she's like,
Wow.
and now she's like, shit.
And this was in the 50s.
And this was, yeah, it was when Manson was at the Gibraltar School of War.
Yeah.
She like connected
when
the
he was
dots.
like 12, 13, and that range where he would be there.
Yeah, and she was like,
Crazy.
did I throw rocks
At Manson.
at Manson? Am I part of his villain origin story?
That's wild.
And so then yeah, for like the rest of her life, we'd be like, well, at least we didn't create serial killers. And she's like, shut up.
So
So-
I'll tell you the full story. And I tell it a bunch. So it's a good one. My dad was at a park and he met a couple of the girls that were part of the Manson family. None of the girls that had actually done the killings later on, because Manson always had a group of girls around him. It was kind of his thing when he was traveling around the country and they were doing the whole, kind of gypsy caravan thing. But anyway, he met a couple of the girls and him and his buddy were there in the park and they said, hey, you want to go and party? And my dad said, sure, I'd love to. You guys got some drugs? And she said, yeah, but we got to go talk to Jesus. And he said, okay, whatever. And so they took him to a park bench and Manson came out of the hotel and sat down on the park bench, was playing his guitar. And the girls went up and talked to him. Now, my dad at the time was about 6'2", about 220. His friend was kind of a pudgy guy, about 5'10", about 240. But Manson took one look at my dad and said, he can't come to the party. Was not interested at all because we all know that Manson's all 5'2" and 120 pounds, right?
Yeah. Your dad probably could have picked him up and thrown him across the room.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so my dad was told that he couldn't come to the party. So they left. And my dad went to his buddy and said, listen, we know where the party's at tonight. We're going to go back and we're going to rob him of his drugs. So they went back that night to the hotel and listened at all the doors and could not find the party. they must have left and moved on and moved somewhere else.
Wow.
But they were gonna, my
They were
dad
that
was gonna go
close
back
to-
there. Yep, was gonna try
That's
to rob
funny.
Manson. And you know, what's really funny is my dad, if Manson would have taken some time to talk to my dad wanted, like, my dad is crazy to begin with, right? He always wanted to be a mafia hitman. Like, he did,
It's good
he
to
was
have a
supposed,
goal.
yeah, he was supposed to do a favor for Angelo Bruno, who was the boss of Philadelphia. But Angelo got killed 3 weeks later. They blew his brains out.
Oh,
So my dad never did have to fulfill his promise to him. So it kind of all got squashed. But he was like, number one, he wanted to go and do that. You know, my dad, I just talked to him this last week, and he was telling me, you know, he was a Marine. He went into the Marines. He ended up out early because of a medical injury. It was actually one of his commanding officers dropped a 50-pound bag of flour on his back from 2 stories and tried to kill him. They had gotten into an argument, and my dad lifted more than he did. And so he was getting him back for embarrassing him in front of the other officers. And so anyway, but my dad went into the military because he wanted to go to war and kill people. So, you know, this is kind of like where I grew up. This is like the mindset that I came from. So when I come to true crime, often it is from a very different perspective than a lot of other people. A
Yeah.
lot of people come at it from a purely academic or, you know, just fascinated by, you know, how anybody could ever think like that. And I come from having a lot of those thoughts and dealing with a lot of those same kinds of emotions. So when I come and I talk to people, and I do talks on serial killer psychology all the time, I do a show called Serial Killers Around the World. I do 5 Minute Murder. A lot of when I'm talking about things is from a very personal perspective. So I think it's fascinating that we can live lives where we can make changes. We don't have to buy into those things. We don't have to live in the fantasy. But so many of those people that go and commit those crimes and then go and kill people are so lost in the fantasy that they can never find their way out. And once you are so far gone, it's not possible to find a way back
Yeah.
because it just eludes your mind so much. But it's fascinating. It's
Yeah.
with that, there's the lead into the book. I've got a book
Yes.
that comes out in April called well, I don't even know the title of it yet because
What is on your website? It says True Crime Myth and Legends.
yeah,
And
so
it's
that
volume
was
1. So there's going to be
Yeah.
sequels, obviously.
yes. So the book was initially planned to be one book in 3 parts. If you haven't noticed, I can't shut up. So I started writing the first volume, well, the first part, which was serial killers. So part 1 was supposed to be serial killers, part 2 was criminals, part 3 was cults and religion. When I got about 3/4 of the way through serial killers, I was already at 40,000 words. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm not going to be able to do this in 3 parts because it's going to be an 800-page encyclopedia. I was like, all right, so we're going to have to break this up into 3 parts. So the first part and the first book will be on serial killers, but we are going through telling the brief story, the brief history of who they were, what they did, who they killed, and then I start talking about the different myths and legends that arise around those cases. Like, for example, maybe I don't want to go with that one. All right, I'll go with this one. Lizzie Borden, was she a lesbian?
Yeah.
Was Lizzie Borden, did her parents find out that she was a lesbian, and did she kill them because of that? So those are some of the things that we talk about. You know, was Elizabeth Bathory a vampire? Did she really bathe in the blood of virgins? You know, did she kill, 600 people? You know, stuff like that. We'll get into that. You know, we talk about Jack the Ripper. We talk about H.H. Holmes, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer. One of the big things in there with Jeffrey Dahmer that we talk about is, did he kill Adam Walsh? So the legend is that he may have killed him, and he was in Florida at the time. There is evidence that he was at the mall at the time that Adam Walsh disappeared.
But
You know,
Adam Walsh, I mean, just because Dahmer was like the first one that I watched unfold like live on
Yeah.
TV. I think that theory doesn't hold water just because Adam Walsh was a child and Dahmer, I mean, he went down into the teens.
12 was his
yeah,
youngest that we know of.
But never, I mean, there's no
So-
evidence of him going
So
younger.
you also have to remember, this is him coming out of the military, right?
Yeah, so like first kill, easiest target, you got a point.
And he had already killed before that, before he went into the military.
Yeah.
He now comes back from
really?
the military.
Yeah,
He's
he was
living down there.
Yeah,
right?
he
He
was
has no
pulled over
money.
with a body in the trunk, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
got pulled over, and the cop didn't look in the trunk.
Yep.
And if he had just looked in the trunk, he would have found the dead body, and we wouldn't have
Interesting.
had the whole.
Oh, well, see,
So-
Yeah.
the thing is that she is the serial killer person, and I'm
He's the
the
cult person.
because
Nice.
Yes.
I'm ex-Mormon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
okay.
and I saw it for the bullshit that it was, and I'm like, I'm out. But I'm just fascinated
Warren
with that,
Jeffs,
with that
baby.
cult. Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
That guy is wild.
It's like you don't know
Wild.
if he was either the same or worse or better than Joseph Smith because he was just as
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. But I know I
It-
scare
it-
him sometimes because I'll be watching like Snapped, you know, where women kill their lovers or whatever. And I'll be like, oh, that's where they went wrong. I bet that's how they caught him. And he's looking at me like, should I be like worried that you know? Or
Yeah.
should I be proud that you know?
Here's
and
the
I'm
thing.
like,
Just
yes.
don't do anything wrong.
Yeah, that's why I tell
You
him,
don't have
I'm
to worry
like,
about it.
you know, I know how to not get caught. You know, I know to go buy the vat of acid 3 states over using cash and wearing a disguise. We already know that. So just don't fuck up and we won't find out. Just,
That's it. You don't have
Yeah,
to worry
yeah.
about it.
you know, yeah, you know.
So the thing about Dahmer, I'll tell you, when I started looking into that theory, I thought it was all bullshit. And Dahmer denied doing it, right? They asked him about it in a couple interviews, and he denied it. However, Dahmer was already in prison at the time, right? People already didn't like him because he had killed all these men and boys, but he was not technically a pedophile at that time. I guess technically he was a pedophile.
Technically, yeah, because he went
but
that
he was-
young, but
Yeah, he was not at the time when he was in prison considered a pedophile. If he would have admitted to the Adam Walsh, they would have definitely been a pedophile.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because Adam Walsh, I think, was 6 years old when
Yeah.
he was abducted.
so he would have met
So-
his demise in prison a little
For
earlier
sure.
than he did.
A little earlier.
Yeah.
Now, that's of course if you believe that, and I think it's interesting that when you look at the police reports of his death in prison, that he didn't fight back. When Christopher Scarver beat him to death, there are no defensive wounds at all. Now, the other guy that Scarver killed, there were a bunch of defensive wounds, right? Because he fought back. But Dahmer seems to have accepted it, right? Like he was ready to go, that he knew. And at that point, he had become, a Christian, if you want to believe that. He had committed himself to something else. And I'll be honest, whether you believe that stuff is true or not, I think that he believed it was true.
Yeah.
I think he believed that was his.
So he was basically self-deluding.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
He's believing his
Well,
own bullshit.
Yeah.
basically.
Well, I kind of chuckle because my mom worked in the court system here in Boone County for 13 years. And, after school, walked to the courthouse. It was 3 blocks from where we lived. And she'd be going through the mail and she'd hold up an envelope that was from somebody in prison that the judge had put away. And she put it to her head, like Johnny Carson would do.
Yeah, yeah.
She put it to her head and Dear Judge, I have found the Lord in prison and I should be released. And she'd open it and she'd like,
Yeah.
yep, and set it aside. She's like,
Oh yeah.
and I look at her and she's like, we get 3-4 of these a week. I have found the Lord in prison and I am a changed man and you should let me out of prison and, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, they'll do anything, anything to get out of there.
So, but what you're saying is that Dahmer might have actually believed it.
He might have.
Yeah.
He might have been
I
like,
believe-
this is my punishment from
Well,
the
didn't-
Lord then, so let's
oh,
do it.
Okay, I'm like behind on my serial killers, but didn't Dahmer have something to do with Mormonism in as much as that he had made friends with people in that church and they just knew him as Jeffrey Dahmer?
That. Have you?
I don't know about
There's
that.
one
I don't know
serial
about
killer
that.
I think that like befriended some Mormon families.
There are so many serial
give him
killers.
kind of character witness.
Probably. I'm
Yeah,
wanting to say like maybe Bundy because
It might have been Bundy.
he lived in that area for
Yeah,
a
I'm
while.
not sure.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know for
possible because he
sure.
did.
Well,
He
see,
was
I,
through
well, see,
Utah.
I confused you guys know your shit. So, if
Yeah.
I bring up like, oh, well, no, it was so-and-so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well,
But I mean,
you
yeah,
know-
are you not surprised? I was like, well,
Yeah.
Bundy lived in the
It was-
Utah
it
area,
was
so
probably-
it
Yeah.
could have been
I was
him.
confusing
So
it too. My bad.
I don't know though.
So-
I'd have to look that up.
Yeah, that'd be something I'd have to look up too. I know, of course, Dahmer, his dad was Christian.
Okay.
His dad was pretty devout at the time. And it's really the reason why his dad stuck by him. Of course, Lionel Dahmer just died 3 weeks ago, I think. He just passed away. I also have his book up on my shelf right now.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, it's interesting to read his book because a lot of people gave him a lot of shit for that book and saying that he was cashing in on, the crimes that his kid committed and everything. And that book is anything but that. Those people
Really?
obviously never read it, right? The book is definitely his own personal catharsis in trying to deal with, did I create this monster? Was it me who, because I felt a lot of the same things that my son felt, but I didn't go and kill anybody, but did I foster that in him? And in a lot of that book, he's going through that. And so if you read it, I think it's an amazing account of a father really trying to deal with this horrible, horrible thing that's happened and trying to understand, like, if it was me or not. And I think we all, when things like that happen, whether our kids go on to be, presidents or, criminals or whatever, we all wonder, like, what is it? Like, what hand did we have in that? Did
Yeah.
we help that along?
Yeah.
Did we foster that? Was it, because we yelled at them one day that they decided to go and murder 30 people? That's a difficult question to deal with
Yeah.
psychologically, because all of us have an effect on the people around us all the time. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter who you are. You could be a piece of shit. You could be a great person. You have an effect on the people that you're around. And it's important to understand that and to use that for whatever purposes you have,
Yeah.
good
I
or
think-
bad.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons why I'm interested in people that commit murder, whether it be serial or the one time or whatever, is what is it in here that's different between them and me? Because I know one of the things that came out, especially like, during Dahmer was, well, he was lonely. I'm like, then join a fucking book club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Find a D&D group. Nerds are awesome. It's like,
Yep.
what is different between me? Oh, I'm lonely. I'm going to go out of the house and seek like people and, find my tribe, or somebody else that's like, well, I'm going to create this zombie army by drilling holes in their head and dumping this acid in, and oops, I killed them. So I'm going to cut them up and create this altar of bones. It's like, what,
Yeah. What led you to that?
what is it in here that makes sense? And I know, like, we're watching like the Chris Watts, and I was watching it with him, and he's like, why didn't he just get a fucking divorce? And it's like, exactly, that's what's different between your brain and his brain. To him, to people, whether it be man or woman, that kills their significant other. It's like, why didn't you just get a divorce?
Well,
Just get a divorce. And
I think with
a lot of it comes down to, the
well, I think
money
with
and
Chris
stuff.
Watts, I think that's it. I think it comes down to money. I think that he knew that if he divorced her, she would take him to the cleaners and he'd be paying for that shit the rest of his life.
Yeah, because
And I
3
think
kids.
I think he thought that he was smart enough to be able to do it and not get caught, right?
Yeah.
And he tried to play it off, and the whole, we're searching for the bodies, and I'm crying on camera. I think he really thought that he had it, and he was dead wrong. Now,
Yeah.
of course, I say that knowing that he's also currently trying to, appeal again and trying to get off.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. And my friend EJ just posted today that he had something going through the court system right now, and they're talking about it. And what do you think about that? I think he's guilty as shit, personally. But I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say when the cell phone pings at the tower right at your job where the bodies are. It's hard to say that it wasn't you, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that.
Yeah.
That's amazing circumstantial evidence. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that. So
Yeah.
I think what you're asking, or what you were saying, is the number one question that everybody has, right? We all want to understand how seemingly normal people, or at least from the outside, could go and do those things. And so for me, I always found that question fascinating, but I would always add to that question, and I would always, in my mind, always be like, why haven't I done that already? Right? Because I know that I had a lot of the same thoughts, the same fantasies, uh, which is not something that normal people deal with, right?
Yeah.
I was very, very abused when I was a child. And so I understand from that perspective how that develops in somebody's psyche. So, I've always been fascinated to understand why. And I think there are a bunch of different answers for that. And I don't think it's the same for everybody, right? I think that there is definitely a biological component. I think that you're born with certain things, whether that is a certain aggressive nature that you're born with, whether that is some kind of mental defect that you're born with, bipolar disorder or something like that, that makes you more susceptible to explosive anger and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that that is part of it. I think that there is an environmental part to that. How you're raised, your upbringing, the people around you, what you're exposed to as a kid when you're very impressionable. Because one of the things that we often neglect, and I think that psychologists try to bring this out, and I can say that I disagreed with them for a long time, but the more and more I study, the more and more I understand that they were right. Those first 13 years of our lives are the most important moments in our life, right? Because all of our later beliefs and ideas are all formed in those first 13 years, right? When we are adolescents and children, all of our beliefs about the world are formed then, and they change very, very slowly after that. As you become an adult, you don't change your opinions. Very rarely does that happen. You don't change the way that you view the world. So all of those things that happen during the childhood years, you live with the rest of your life, whether it's mom saying that you're too fat and you're never going to lose weight, you're never going to be any good, dad beating the shit out of you and calling you a piece of shit all the time, whatever that is, you're going to hear that in your head for the rest of your life. How you deal with that determines later on who you become, right? People, we all know them, people that walk around with the fucking black cloud over their head that end up never being able to do anything helpful in life. They're everywhere. that's because they can't deal with the voices that they're hearing, right? They can't stop somebody that has been telling them all their lives that they're a piece of shit and they can't do anything. They're going to keep hearing that and they keep buying into it. They keep believing it. But as soon as you break that cycle, because another person that lived in the same exact household could go on to be wildly successful and make millions of dollars. Why? Because they changed how they relate to that same exact event that happened in their life. But I think that killers are the same way. There are different events that happen, so your environment is part of that. But I also believe that there is some kind of trigger that happens for every one of them. For example, Eileen Wuornos, her trigger was a guy raping her, right? She had been molested most of her life, and all it was one more time. Somebody abused her, and she lost control and then could never stop it after that. Several of the other men that she killed 7, I believe. At least 3 or 4 of them were not even in a sexual situation. One of them was a guy that picked her up on the side of the road who was a preacher that was just trying to take her to her next destination and drop her off. And she blew him away, right?
Yeah.
So he was not trying to rape her. So, she was just referring all of the bullshit. Maybe he got freaked out by something she said and turned around and was loud and she couldn't handle it and then killed him because of it. So I think that there's some kind of trigger that happens often during that time that, all of these things are going on. Ed Kemper is a good example. There are these fantasies that they start having that they can't get away from. So these fantasies, and they get lost in this fantasy world. And, Kemper, a good example of that, he was lonely. He wanted to be with women, right? He wanted to perform sexually with them, but his mother is constantly telling him, you're never going to be with anybody. You're never going to have anybody. Nobody's ever going to love you. Nobody's going to be able to take care of you the way that I do. So he goes and he starts having these fantasies about what he wants to do to these women. And because he can't have them and he can't perform the way that he wants to, for some reason it clicks over, well, I need to cut off their heads. I need to kill them. And then he starts to get a rush from carrying around the body parts and carrying the heads around other people that are, he mentions in a couple of his interviews that he would walk into his house with his photography case with a head in it. And the couple that lived downstairs would be standing there, making out. And he'd walk past them as they're getting ready to go out on a date. And he'd think, why can't I have that? But he's super excited about the fact that they don't know that he's got a head in his bag right now.
Yeah.
Right? How lost in your fantasies do you have to be to find that exciting? Right?
Yeah.
And it's and then it becomes a whole stimulation thing, right? They can't get stimulation other places, but this is where they get it. But the problem is that the fantasy never meets reality. So just like somebody that's doing heroin, that's always chasing that high, can never get enough and continues to do it, it's the same thing with serial killing. They get to a place where they can never meet that fantasy. So they go through this cycle. And one of the things I talk about in my talks all the time that we often don't talk about is after they kill, there is typically a depression that happens, right?
Yeah.
That often the killers want to kill themselves because they can't handle what they've done, or they can't handle the fact that it didn't meet their expectations.
Yeah.
But often they're too narcissistic to be able to kill themselves, right? So they can't do it themselves. So then they get to a place where the cycle starts all over again. They see somebody out there. Bundy is a good example. He would see somebody with the dark hair that fit his liking, and then he would start to stalk them and decide that he was going to go in there and kill them. BTK did the same thing. So, it's fascinating. But I think that one of the things that I always talk about is that all of us have the potential to kill. Every single one of us. Given the right influence, the right circumstances, I know for certain if somebody came around and hurt my son or hurt my family, I'm going to go after them, right? And I'll do what I have to do. If tomorrow I lost my job, the country shut down, and I didn't have any food, I would go to Walmart and I'd steal as much as I could. And if you get in my way, I'd kill you. Right.
Yeah.
Given the right influence, all of us would kill, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we would be a serial killer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That is something very,
It's
very
a whole
different.
situational,
Oh,
Yeah.
That,
you know,
that's a different mindset.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like you said, somebody, hurts your family. That's a whole different situation than I'm sitting in the park looking at this, person thinking, right now I could just walk over there and slit their throat. Why don't I? I have a knife. Let's go. It's a whole different, because I know I'm a TikTok addict. Admitting that you have a problem is a step to recovery. But I'm never going to recover. And there was a video going around of somebody asking all these moms, could you kill for your child? And them going, I don't know, and I was talking over it with another friend of mine, and she's like, well, if they had said it on tape, that's premeditated. And I'm like, okay, good point. Because I know personally, somebody goes after my daughter, they're dead. Just end of discussion. I will find strength I didn't know I had and black out. And 5 minutes later, I'm holding their head in my hands going, whoops, guess that didn't work out for you. I know I could do that.
Yeah.
And, and now I've admitted it on video. So I guess that's premeditated now. I don't know. Now Jeff's going to have to testify at the trial.
There you go.
That's it.
Yeah. Now you're going to be like,
mind.
no, we got into a discussion. It's on video. She said she could
That's
kill.
okay. I've incriminated myself so many times. It's too late for me.
Yeah.
This is fascinating because you mentioned that. You mentioned people just sitting in a park thinking about, I could go slit somebody's throat. I remember there was a time in my life where that was a regular thing that happened in my head, right? I would just meet people, talk to people. Now, it's probably been the last 10 years or so that has not been the case. And I don't know exactly why. Maybe I've gotten to a place in my life where, I'm not living in all of my own personal trauma. And I've gotten to a place where I'm out of that. And I've been able to become much, much more healthy and find healthy ways to deal with those things. But that was a regular thing for me. And I never understood why. I don't ever hear normal people thinking these things. You don't normally walk up to somebody and say hi to them and smile and think about what a hammer would be like going through their forehead, right?
Yeah.
But I would regularly have those thoughts about everybody, not just random people, but people that I knew. And so I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? And so part for me, creating all the games, writing the book, diving into this stuff has all been a lot of therapy for me. Understanding that there are these things and that thoughts happen, right? It doesn't mean that we need to do those things. It doesn't mean all of us have crazy thoughts. I don't know that I want to use my dad as an example for this, but if you go into any restaurant where there's an old coffee shop where there's 5 or 6 60, 70-year-old guys sitting around having coffee, and some girl walks in with a short skirt on, guarantee you every one of those guys is going to make a comment, right? That doesn't mean that they're going to do something to that person, right?
Oh, yeah.
They may make a comment, it may be inappropriate, what they said may not be good, but that doesn't mean that they're going to actually act on that.
Yeah.
Now, there are other people that won't say a fucking word.
Those
and
are
then
the
we'll
ones.
just go and act on it, right?
Yeah.
Those are the ones that you have to be scared of.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of those people out there that might be right at the edge that are not self-aware enough to be able to control their impulses.
Mhm.
Because we all have impulses. Doesn't matter who you are. You have to be self-aware enough to be able to control those.
Yeah.
And figure out, what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know every once in a while, he'll be stretching, and we just had a laugh over this the other night because he was stretching, and the first thought I had was I could so pop him in the balls right now and give
All right.
I could do
Yeah.
it. I could do it. He's all stretched. He's not paying attention. I could just bam. And, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? This is the father of my child. This is the man I've been married to for going on 27 years now. And I had that thought, I could so cause him physical pain right now. And there, he wouldn't be able to stop me. I don't. That's the important step, and I tell him, it's like, I realize the thought is wrong. I realize that I would cause you pain and all of that. But every time you get into a really good stretch, I'm like, I could just bam. And and I'm frequently like, what is wrong with me? Why do I have this thought? What's going on in my head right now? And it's like, so we all have that thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I
We
think
all,
it's funny.
you know,
A lot of us have animals, right? And I always think it's amazing. Like, I have 4 cats, and the cats in the house are so incredibly trusting, right? And I think about this a lot because none of my cats will like swipe or bite or anything like that. They're all very good. And they often will like roll over to their back and, expose their belly. And it's like, we don't do that unless you're super comfortable, right?
yeah.
And
Yes.
nothing's going to happen. And I think human beings, we get the same way. We get very comfortable in our, in our relationships and the people around us. I think often that can be a double-edged sword too, because it can be very dangerous. Because we all have those people, and I know we've all experienced it, where the people that are closest to us, because we live with humans, and humans can sometimes be the worst, and they stab you in the back and do things that you would never ever expect those people to do. And so, I think it's interesting. When I was in high school, well, no, when I was in college, I guess, if you talk to some of my college roommates, they will tell you back then I was fighting, I was training, I was coaching, and I was very, very aggressive. And it was not uncommon for somebody to come home after work and open the door and me tackle them and throw them on the ground and like put them in an arm bar or elbow them in the face or something. That was like a regular occurrence. And so, like, I freak out a lot of people. Like me and my sister, we've gotten old enough now that we don't do this. But it used to be we didn't see each other for years and years. And as soon as we would see each other, I would grab her and choke her out. Like, it was just a normal thing. That's how we showed affection. I grew up on the East Coast, right? And so, like, unlike people here in the middle of the country that are very nice and cordial to each other, like in the East Coast, you just yell at each other. And often you're physical with other people and you don't mean shit by it. So, like, that's kind of how our family was, very, very physical. So I didn't understand when I went to college and I lived with people that were not from the East Coast, and they were all like, dude, why do you keep like people would like raise their arms to stretch and I'd punch them in the stomach because I thought it was funny, right?
Yeah.
Up until about, I don't know, until I retired from fighting. I retired probably 8 or 9 years ago now. But even up until that point, we would train together, and I would regularly just like randomly kick people, like, and not like nice. Like, I fought and I did a bunch of Muay Thai, so it'd be shin straight to the meat of their thigh, like dropping people to the ground. And I thought it was funny as can be. They did not find it very funny at all.
I can
I
imagine.
can
Not
see
at all.
that.
Imagine.
So,
Yeah. Not humorous at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
I never had a problem with it. Like,
Well, of course not. You were not the one being dropped to the ground. Of course you
Exactly.
wouldn't, have
I
that
had
problem.
guys. It was funny because I had guys that would come over and train because I had probably in 1 week I'd have 20 or 30 guys come over the house and train with me, and I had people that would come over all the time and they're like, "God damn, you're way too physical, Jeff." And to me, it was just normal, right? Like, I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And as I've gotten older, and like I said, I'm going to be 44 this year. My body does not work quite like it used to, and so I had to understand how to scale that back a little bit because
Yeah.
like in that, like I fought for a long time, and then after that, I retired from fighting, and I got into ultra endurance events where I would go and do military style endurance where they would take you out into the middle of nowhere and yell and scream at you and treat you like shit and beat you up and make you carry stuff over the top of like mountains and stuff. And it was very, very interesting to go and do that and to realize, now that I did that because of who I am. Like I needed somebody to abuse me so that I could break through, right? And understand that somebody doing that was not a form of abuse, but it was a form of instruction and to teach you how to be resilient and how to make it through anything. And I had to shift that in my mind. But to do that, I had to go and be in the middle of nowhere and have somebody yelling and screaming at me. Now, not everybody has to do that. We all find that in different ways in our lives and find different ways that we can find out how to deal with that past trauma. But that's how I dealt with it.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. I found my limits real quick. There were many, many days that I was carrying big, heavy 200-pound rocks through the woods, crying my eyes out, thinking, what the hell am I doing here? But I finished.
You did it. You did it.
Okay.
Well, oh my goodness, we've been talking for almost an hour and a half. Oh my gosh. I could seriously talk to you for freaking ever though.
Oh well, yeah, get you guys on some serial killers and some crime, and we'll just hang out all day.
Exactly. It's like let's get together for drinks next convention and we'll just talk. Are you going to be
absolutely
in Indy this summer?
For which one?
For Days of the Dead.
I will probably not be there for Days of the Dead. I was thinking about going and doing Chicago. But I'm not vending there currently. I may go up there for the day. I will be in Indy for Gen Con this year.
Okay.
And I think I'll be in Indy for a couple other things.
Okay.
Days of the Dead was a lot of fun. It was not super successful for me. But
last year was kind of a very quiet year compared to past years.
I think last year was like, wasn't that the year that they had all the like the air conditioning and everything went out and everybody was roasting in there?
No, it was
2 years
ago. It was two or 3 years ago.
That was the downtown hotel.
That was the downtown location that the air conditioning busted and everybody was dying. And then we moved from that hotel to where it is now.
Nice.
Which is on the southeast side.
Which is on the southeast side, which is kind of a better location. We have more rooms, stuff like that. But yeah, it's not last year, but was it the year before or the year before that we had Alice Cooper, Richard Dreyfuss.
It wasn't 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Like all of these people and their lines just kind of went into this amoeba. And everybody's yelling at me to control the lines. And I'm like, I need more people. I can only,
That year that they had us like, I don't know what it was. The room was like a circle. And then they had the booths in the middle.
Yeah.
And I was in the middle and nobody came down the aisle.
Yeah, because everybody goes around.
Everybody went around the circle, and I'm like, please just come down the middle. There's a whole bunch of us sitting here.
Yeah. So that's why I always like do the outside loop first, but then I go down those aisles because I know.
It's but it was I know that I was hoping actually my first show this year is going to be in Akron. There is a small. Maybe it's not small. I don't know. I've not been there. But the Akron Comic-Con, I guess, is putting on a horror show up there.
Oh, cool.
Called Monster something. I don't think it's Monster Palooza, but it's something like that.
Okay.
But I'm going to be up there at that. That's my first show of the year.
Okay.
In February, actually February 3rd. So I'll be up there. And then I'm doing a bunch of the World Oddities Expo.
Okay.
So I'll be at a bunch of those shows. I'll be in Chicago. Actually, my first show is for them is in Kansas City, like 2 weeks after in Kansas City, Missouri. And it'll be super cool because that's where Bob Berdella is from. So I got to do a Route 666 and I got to go to where the Bob Berdella's house was.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Little pilgrimage.
Yeah.
Okay, so if people want to find you,
Yeah,
find out
it's,
more about
What
your
kind? Yes.
games, your upcoming book, all of that,
Where to find you,
where
blah,
could they
blah, blah.
find you?
So there are two ways that are easy to find me. The games and everything, you can go to scorpionlairgames.com.
Okay.
That's the easiest place to find all the games. If you want to find everything else that I'm doing, go to Linktree /Killers TCG, and that will get you to every other link that I have.
Okay.
I'm going to show you guys this real quick before we get
Okay,
off here.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
I forgot
yeah.
to do it earlier.
Plugging time. This is
So-
your plug time.
Yeah.
So this here is the case. I literally just got it. That's what I was waiting on for
Yeah.
Amazon
Okay,
to come
cool.
for. On the Kickstarter for the Profiler, the Super Sleuth package, the real big one, it's like going to be like $200, but it'll come with the case. And in the case, you get the cards that come with it.
Oh, raise it up a
you
little bit
get-
so you can see it.
Oh, he's picking it up. Oh, you get it. You get the
You get,
deerstalker hat.
there you go.
Yes.
You get a hat, you get a magnifying glass,
All right.
and then you get all the stuff that comes with the game too.
Okay.
So
All
the
right.
folders and all the information, and it comes in this crazy case, this attaché case that you can carry all over the place and keep all your valuables. It's good.
Great.
So
the case that does not look suspicious at all.
Exactly.
At all.
not at all.
At all. Every movie where I see him carrying like the silver briefcase, I'm like, that's the killer right there. The
Yep.
person wearing that. They have a gun in there.
Or they're
Well, hopefully
doing
that
the
will be your
drop for the,
moderator.
monthly
Yeah, or the
drugs
drop
or
for
whatever.
the yeah. So cool. Well, okay, so scorpionlair.com because we're gonna
ScorpionLairGames.com.
okay, because we're gonna include
Yep.
links down, below this once we get it
Okay.
posted.
You'll put
Yeah,
graphics
and then the-
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Linktree / I'll send it to you.
Yes.
It'll
Send
be
it to
easier
me.
that way. I'll
Yeah.
send it to you because Linktree is weird. It's like linktr.ee /Killers
Oh.
TCG. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me
Gotcha.
because we want to include the links,
Sweet.
when we post this. So
Pardon
well,
me.
yeah, this has been amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I'm
Yes.
so glad that you are our first killer interview for the year.
Yay!
I'm so clever. So yeah, this has been awesome. I hope to see you on the convention trail soon.
I will be all over the place, ready to
yeah.
rock and roll.
So yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for being
We'll have to
here.
bring Jeff back.
Yes, and we will have to bring you back, like,
definitely closer to when the book
Next,
comes
if you
out.
get new,
Not-
new
Yeah.
games, new books, the whole nine,
Yes.
we will
Absolutely.
definitely have to bring you back.
What do you get you
Absolutely.
guys talking about serial killers again? I don't think we can do that.
I don't,
I don't know if we can make that happen.
I don't think there's enough time in the day.
I know.
I know. So anyway, thanks so much for being on. And this
Absolutely.
has just been
Thank you,
so fun.
guys.
Thank you.
Hey there.
Hey, okay, so that was Jeff Ignatowski, and I'm just so proud of myself for pronouncing his name correctly.
Iggy.
Iggy. I don't think he'd like us calling him that. Anyway,
There's a famous character named Ignatowski
Uh-huh.
that they called him Iggy, and that's the first thing that popped in my head because I'm a pop culture nut.
all
Yeah,
right.
Go ahead.
I'll forgive you. Anyway, we're posting links to everything down below the video, so go check those out if you are a true crime buff. He has got tons of games for you to check out. He has a new game coming out called The Profiler, which you and a group of friends get to solve the crime. And his new book coming out. So yeah, go check that out. And we are working on some other stuff coming out. I'm sure we're going to be
Yes.
doing some more reviews, actual reviews coming up.
Yeah, we got our stuff straightened out. I retired from flying and stuff, and we're just kind of doing some shuffling, but we're getting back on the air.
Yeah. So stay tuned for more stuff.